Let's talk about some disorders of the integumentary system. And let's start with one so common that I suspect everybody has experienced it at one point or another in their life, and that would be a cut or a scrape. A cut or a scrape damages the skin. It damages the epidermis and into the dermis, where it damages blood vessels and causes bleeding. There are a couple of problems with this. First, we're losing blood through bleeding, and second, we have an opening in the skin, which prevents it from carrying out the functions it needs to carry out. It's an opening for infection because we're not protected against that anymore, and it's an opening through which we can lose body fluids. The first thing that happens in the healing process is that a blood clot forms. That's important to block the opening and prevent further blood loss, or to prevent more things from getting in that shouldn't be in. At the same time as the blood clot is forming, the damaged cells and cells in the area called mast cells are releasing important inflammatory chemicals. And these chemicals that are being released increase blood flow to the area, which is important to bring in more oxygen and nutrients for healing. And they also attract white blood cells, or macrophages. These macrophages are important because they are the cleanup crew. The macrophages come in and they phagocytize, or engulf, the damaged cells, bits of tissue, any foreign material or bacteria that might have gotten in from the outside, basically clean up what doesn't belong. If any particular pathogens got in through the opening, the macrophages can also activate the immune system to mount a response against that, hopefully before it establishes an infection. Once the cleanup has happened, we have to repair the damaged tissue. If you remember the characteristics of epithelial cells divide quickly and so they can repair relatively easily. The epidermis of the skin is made of epithelial cells, and so we have what's called regeneration of the epithelium. The epithelial cells of the epidermis will divide to create new cells and heal the epidermis. The dermis is a little bit trickier because the dermis is made of dense, irregular connective tissue. And connective tissue contains fewer cells with lots of extracellular matrix fibers between them. In order to heal the dermis, we do see some cell division. We see more fibroblasts being made, but those fibroblasts have to secrete fibers to actually heal the damaged area. And that healing by the production of fibers is called fibrosis. And it's not quite able to reconstruct the original configuration of the tissue. So this is why we sometimes end up with scarring. It's the buildup of these fibers to heal the damaged area of the dermis. Burns are another common disorder of the integumentary system. I'm sure that most of us have experienced a burn at one point or another. Burns can be caused by a lot of different things, including fire, hot objects, sunlight, UV radiation, electricity, or chemicals. Regardless of what causes the burn, we classify burns based on how much tissue is damaged. In a first-degree burn, only the epidermis is damaged. We still see symptoms because we have damaged the cells. Those damaged cells will release signals to activate inflammation, so we can see symptoms like redness and possibly swelling, and they can be mildly painful. Because the damage is only to the epidermis, these burns heal by regeneration, so we just divide the cells of the epidermis to make more cells, and we can heal the damage that way, often in just a day or two. A sunburn is a common example of a first-degree burn. However, some sunburns can be classified as second-degree burns. In a second-degree burn, there's damage to the epidermis and into the dermis. In addition to redness, when we have this damage to the dermis, we see swelling and often blistering, and more severe pain than is experienced with a first-degree burn. In a second-degree burn, the epidermis will still heal by regeneration, by those cells dividing to create more epidermal cells. However, in cases where the stratum basale of the epidermis is too damaged by the second-degree burn to be able to regenerate from there, we get regeneration of the epidermis from the epidermal cells that are found in the hair follicles and the glands. So those cells can actually repopulate and form new epidermis. The dermis, also being damaged, will be healed by the process of fibrosis. Macrophages will come in and phagocytize the damaged tissue, and then the fibroblasts will create new fibers of collagen and elastic fibers. This will take longer than the healing of the epidermis and can cause scars. So occasionally you can have scarring from a second-degree burn. A third-degree burn involves the full thickness of the skin. So the entire epidermis is damaged and the entire dermis is damaged down to the underlying hypodermis or muscle tissue. With this type of burn, because you've damaged the entire thickness of the skin, there's a high risk for infection, for fluid loss, and even shock from the toxic effects of all the dead cells. Because a third-degree burn damages the full thickness of the skin, the epidermis and the dermis, we don't have any more stratum basale to regenerate from. The hairs and glands are destroyed, as are the nerve endings in that area of the skin. Because of this, it's very difficult to heal third-degree burns. They heal very slowly, and they tend to produce a lot of scarring, and third-degree burns often require skin grafts in order to heal. In a skin graft, a section of skin is taken from elsewhere on the body and then put over the burned area in order to provide the cells that you need in order to regenerate the epidermis and the dermis.